Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is Multifamily Chronicles, and I'm your host, Adrian Danila. My guest today is Karen Key. Karen is Managing Director for RangeWater, and she's also the current president for the Institute of Real Estate Management, Atlanta chapter. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thanks, Adrian. Happy to be here.
Karen, why don't you start by introducing yourself to us, to the audience, a little bit? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your professional, personal background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am, like Adrian said, I'm Managing Director of Property Management at RangeWater. So I'm one of a few of us. I actually have had the opportunity recently to build out and take over our build to rent platform. So have been in multifamily since 2005. I have a little bit of an unconventional background coming out of school, but did apartments until then. And now I'm getting to do the intentionally built single family neighborhoods. Prior to multifamily in 2005, I actually have a degree, and my background was in restaurant and resort management. So I found a lot of similarities that made it a great transition going from that hospitality, fast-paced restaurant background into the multifamily pace. It kept me going fast, but gave me a little bit better hours, to say the least. I've been at RangeWater now for almost 9 years. It'll be 9 years next month. And prior to that, I've been with a lot of other great companies out there. I was with Greystar for a long time, DRS Management, all of those that have really helped shape my career along the way. But RangeWater has been a very unique experience, and I can't imagine not being here. As you mentioned, I actually just finished my presidency of the Georgia chapter for IREM. It was a great year. I just handed it over to Jonathan Tucker, and I can't wait to stand behind him as an honorary past president and help him with his vision along the way.
I used to work with Jonathan. I used to work with Jonathan at Cortland, and I used to work with him prior to that at a Greystar. So it's a very small world. Karen, you mentioned RangeWater. You've been with them for 9 years. I wanted to start by asking you, what's so special about RangeWater for someone to dedicate 9 years and counting of their career? Something's going to be right. They're going to be doing something right out there. So what are some things they're doing right at RangeWater?
There are so many things that I could point out at RangeWater, but I think it all boils down to it's the culture here. It has a completely different culture than anywhere I've ever worked, than any company I've ever really known across various industries. I'm not even pointing out just multifamily, but when I started with RangeWater, I mean, if you think about it, RangeWater is still a baby compared to a lot of the companies out there. Our management division was founded in 2010, really late in 2010. And when I came 9 years ago, January, we only had 6,000 units under management. And today we have 93,000 units under management. So it's been a lot of growth, but a lot of it is just, it's attributed to the type of environment that we have here. We are a very collaborative company. We're very forward thinking. We want to look at things differently, and we want to constantly try to find new ways to do stuff. So we spend a lot of time studying companies outside of our industry, companies that have great culture, companies that really focus on customer service, and figuring out what makes them tick, figuring out what makes their culture so amazing, and emulating that back into RangeWater. It was interesting. One of the meetings I had earlier today, it was a 2-hour review of our last associate satisfaction survey. We are changing how we do them. We used to do them once a year. Now it's going to be an ongoing thing, but this was our benchmark. And they have an engagement score, and seeing the engagement score of our company far exceeding the benchmark industry average, I mean, by almost 10 points, was a true testament to who we are as a company. And there are things that over the years we've always focused on hearing from our associates and wanting to know, what is the experience for them like on the front lines? What do our on-site teams think? What do our entry-level associates in our various departments feel and think when they come here? And we've really made plans on how to improve that. One of the things you always hear in almost every company is, I want more communication. I need communication from the home office. I don't really understand the vision of the company. One of our top 5 things was, everybody understands the vision of the company. When you're talking about surveying 1,600 people, and that comes back as a top 5 response with a 91% satisfaction, that they have faith in their executive leadership and they understand the vision of the company and how they impact it. to me, that speaks volumes to what we've done to help get that message out. Our executive teams are accessible. They're not up in an ivory tower and just pushing messages down through other people. And the type of culture that has created for us is immeasurable in my mind.
You mentioned feedback. Feedback from, like, first of all, employee feedback. I'd like to ask you on a feedback topic. How does your company processes feedback from employees? Like, there are certain things that employees are voicing out, right, through their surveys. How do you, what's the actionable? How do you process and what do you do with the feedback? What RangeWater does with the feedback once it's being received?
No, I think that's a great question. And again, I think that's something that probably really does make us different because we're a privately owned company, and the way we're structured, we're able to adapt to that feedback quickly compared to some other way other companies are structured out there. Employee feedback, you're going to get it. And what we typically do is whoever it goes to brings it up to the higher group. And then we're like, okay, let's, is this a one-off? Is anybody else hearing this? Is it systemic? At times, we may send out a supplemental survey company-wide asking for feedback on a certain topic to see if it's more global. One thing that I can think of that came up very recently is we had it brought to our executive team that certain associates didn't feel we had a great policy surrounding paternity and maternity leaves. And really, we didn't. And like most companies out there, there's not a specific policy for it, and you use your PTO and that's your time off, and that's just what it is. But Stephen Shores, our CEO, he really, that resonated for him, and he didn't want our associates to feel like they were having to burn all their PTO just to have a child, or that they weren't being considered properly. I mean, we were allowing the 3 months. I mean, you could take 12 weeks off, you could take time off. That wasn't a burden, but they were having to take a lot of that without pay unless they had a short-term disability, things of that nature. So Stephen put together a focus group, and he put together a focus group of associates at all levels in the company, home office and on site, and had them to come together and say, what would you want to see different in this policy? What would you want to get from a paternity and a maternity leave? And some things may be achievable and some things not, but they came together and they reached a resolution that was quickly approved by our executive team and got rolled out company-wide of, hey, effective this day, from here going forward, if you have a child, adopt a child. They included adoption in the policy. It's not just the birth of a child. And here are the benefits that you can get. Here's the time off you can take without having to use your PTO. Here's what you have when you come back. A couple of years ago, again, I know I'm surrounding the same topic, but a couple of years ago, we had several people at the home office that had children, and we started finding spaces within our office that we could dedicate to lactation rooms so that they would have somewhere where they felt that they could go and continue to care for their children and do what they needed to do, but also be back in the office. I don't know why those two came to mind first, but that just shows, like, we'll investigate it. We'll see if it's valid and if it needs changing. We typically put together a focus group because we're not necessarily the right people to come up with what's the best way to do it, and then present to the executive team and roll it out where we can.
I love this, and I love it for so many reasons. You and I both, worked at the site level, and we both know very well that at the site level is where the action happens. And this is where the expertise really is. Like, all we have to do, we're not the experts at a corporate office. We're just not. We're not there every day, day in and day out. Our expertise has been in the past, site. But then when you're not on site on a daily basis, things happen at such a rapid pace, and they change at such a rapid pace. And for us to completely ignore or think that, we know better than the frontline associates, that's probably not the best way to run a company. And I think that it's a very strong statement for your company culture, the number of people that you have with very long tenures with the company, starting with you, with other executives that I know personally in your company, and all the way down to site level. Like, people just love working for RangeWater, so you must be doing something right.
I hope so. And I do, I feel like we do things right. And that task force that I mentioned, I can't tell you the number of times that we form them. They're instrumental in making sure we're staying in front of what our associates need or even what our residents need. We form task force all the time with home office and people from various departments and on-site team members if we're getting feedback from residents, whether that's amenities, design of their interior units, their whatever it may be. I mean, that those task force are instrumental in our success.
Karen, you mentioned your division, build to rent.
Yes.
So this is a fairly new thing in the United States. It's been, the term I think is being coined in Europe, build to rent. They don't use multifamily, they don't use property management. That's the first time I heard BTR was probably like 5 or 6 years ago, and it was in somewhere in England. Someone from England used the term, and they actually had associations and things of that nature. Nothing at a scale that we're doing it right here in the United States, but the term was, I think, adopted from Europe, right? Am I right or wrong about this?
No, so it's funny. You're somewhat right. And honestly, we, at least RangeWater, tried not to use that terminology because we knew outside of the US, build to rent represents what we know as multifamily. It's apartments, it's anything that is built with the intention to be rented. So we actually initially tried to not call it build to rent because of that. We didn't want it to get confused or diluted. But so it was like, what do we call it? And there were so many different acronyms out there. There's build, there's BTR, there's BFR, there's SFR, there's B, the number 2R. There was a million of them out there. We started with SFR, but then quickly learned that that didn't really make sense because most people, when they hear SFR, think of scattered site. And the more it started to catch on and the more there started to be conferences behind this space and it started to become more widespread across the US, BTR and BFR just seemed to be the two acronyms that caught on the most. So we landed on BTR. I think the industry as a whole is still up in the air in terms of what exactly it's going to call, and ours may change again. But yeah, it's a unique phenomenon that's new to us in the US. It's been out in the West for a few years, but a little bit different than what we're seeing in the phenomenon today. Out in the West, you've had builders doing this for a while. And, you know, for this BTR space, it's really in our mind, anything that doesn't go vertical. So if it's not stacked living, we roll it into our build to rent portfolio. So it can be villas, cottages, duplexes, townhomes, or fully detached homes. The caveat is it is a fully rental neighborhood. It's not a scattered site here and there. It's every home within this neighborhood is for rent. And when this first came to me and Tracy Bowers came to me and asked if I wanted to start building out this platform at RangeWater, I jumped at the chance. And honestly, I was like, how have we never done this before? There is an entire subset of the rental population that this speaks to. And we've never tapped into this. We've never gone there. And it baffled me that it took us this long to even think about it. It's like, oh my gosh, this was just under our noses all the time. And it's taken off like crazy. I mean, it's like I said, in the West, it's been there for a while. A lot of those were more of a horizontal multifamily play. So they were fully amenitized. They were running them and staffing them just like a multifamily community would be. And now we're seeing them shift to these more neighborhood feel, not so many amenities, not so many services, but providing these residents what they need and what they're looking for. I mean, we actually, again, talking about how we approach things differently, when Stephen Shores decided this was a space he wanted to be active in, he was really watching it in 2019. And in 2020, when everybody was working from home and trying to figure out how do we keep everybody busy, he put together a task force on let's investigate what this space looks like and where we can exist in it and how we can do it differently. And he very quickly understood. He's like, okay, I want to be a player in this space and I want to be on the front end of it. We had one community and it was really a horizontal multifamily community. And Stephen dedicated me to that space. He was like, I want you rewriting policies and procedures. I want you investigating this. So before we even had communities, before we had anything in the space, he was putting resources behind it. It took a while to get these communities up, but I mean, fast forward, you think about that being August of 2020, we're now December of 2022, and we have 75 open communities, almost 9,000 homes, and we have an awarded pipeline of right at 18,000 homes. So it's been a very fast growth for us in this space, but I attribute that to Stephen and the RangeWater executive team really having that foresight to dedicate the resources to it before it got ahead of them.
It's really truly amazing, and especially with what we're seeing in the market right now with the interest rates, that the opportunity for people to have access to credit, mortgages, to purchase homes kind of it shrinks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially nowadays. So now the alternative is to go rent an apartment, or they could go rent a home. I think those that really want to buy a home, probably their second choice will be renting a home versus renting an apartment. I would think most of them, probably some of them will opt for an apartment, but it only makes sense that this type of product exists out there. And I happen to work for a company that does, service for single family homes for institutional owners, and it's something that's like it's becoming huge. It's becoming absolutely huge. So I'll love to watch RangeWater and watch your growth, and maybe get you back on get you back here to just talk about build to rent or single family homes from home rentals, because this is gonna be in the future is gonna be huge, as big as the apartments are today, right? Do you disagree?
I agree 100%.
Karen, a lot of the viewers are looking at someone like you, with a outstanding career in a business, in property management, in multifamily, and there some of them want to know, hey, what does it take to become an executive? So next, I would like to ask you to share a few things with the audience. What do you think are some things, some traits that really help you get into an executive position, in a position that you are today?
There's a lot of traits we could talk about. I think some of the most important ones, or probably the two most crucial ones that I would point out. Now I'm thinking there's three. We'll start with two: communication and organization. The more you want to move up, and the more you move up, the more you're going to have coming at you at one time. You have to understand how to effectively communicate, and how to communicate to a variety of audiences. So it's not just, oh, I know how to type a great email, or I know how to motivate someone. As you move up, you're talking to so many different audiences. You want to be able to talk to clients. You want to be able to talk to owners. You want to be able to talk to presidents of companies, but then you also have to be able to talk and communicate and relate to regionals, on-site teams, all the way down to groundskeepers. And when you think about the variety of people that you're interacting with on a daily basis, one method of communication isn't going to speak to all of them. So you've got to learn how to be a chameleon, and speak to your audience in the way that's going to resonate with them, and speak clearly and concisely, not talk too much, not talk too little, provide them the information they need that's going to make it relevant in their eyes. On the organization side, it's having a system in place to keep you on track, keep you on task, know what's due when and where you have to be when, because the higher you get, the crazier that calendar gets, and the crazier the demands on you get. So those are probably the two biggest fundamentals. I would say past that, it's to get to that point and to get you where you want to go, it's networking. For those of you out there who may know Dr. Debbie, it's net weaving. It's constantly expanding that mental Rolodex you have. It's making connections in the industry and having those connections that are going to help you get where you want to be, not the ones that are going to hold you back or keep you where you are. It's putting yourself out there, getting involved in organizations like IREM, like the apartment associations, any place that's going to get you that visibility and help you get that recognition. I'm sure everybody has heard, you don't dress for the job you have, you dress for the job you want. And that comes in every aspect. You you have to start acting and emulating where you want to go to get there. So get involved, get to know people, keep that network growing. But then on a personal side, fine tune those communication skills and those organizational skills.
So communication is a big deal.
Yes.
It is. I agree it is. I agree it is. And you have to be able to communicate at every level, from the very bottom to the very top.
Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you for it. Karen, next topic that I have that I want to discuss with you is labor shortages. This is something that, the whole economy has been hit with and has been struggling with a challenge. But I think our industry, multifamily in general, has been hurting more than just any industry in general, generally speaking, right? I can only think of maybe hospitality being hit worse than we were. But other than that, I think we're just right there. We're like right behind hospitality with being challenged to find talent, to find, to fill the vacant positions. So I wanted to get your take on how do you think that we have gotten to this point we got here? And then also to share some solutions, some great things that you learn to be working for you and to be working for your company to attract and also to retain great talent.
I often wonder how we got here too. And you look at the hospitality industry, like you mentioned, and I think they obviously have been hit the hardest. But there's a lot of similarities. It's funny. I have a 20-year-old. I have this 20-somethings in my house, and him not so much as some of his friends. I watch them, and they immediately want these overly flexible jobs, these great hours, no weekends, and whether we realize it or not, and I think it's happened more of the last 10 years, we are part of the hospitality industry. We are there to serve others, and our hours aren't 9 to 5 always. It's not Monday through Friday. And I think a lot of those customer service driven positions have just been the ones that have been hit so hard in this labor shortage. Over years before that, I felt like we started making huge strides. We started getting college degrees that were driven to property management, and people could go to college and come out with a real estate degree and get into property management. So I have faith that it's still going to happen and it's going to bounce back, but it's again, finding the people who understand the flexibility and understand that just because you have to sign up and start at this point, there is such a career that can be started from working in property management and starting at that marketing rep, leasing consultant, and groundskeeper tech positions. It's not just a job, it's a career. And to talk about what we're doing to overcome it, there's a couple of things, but that is a big one for us. We're pushing the career path. We're pushing, okay, you start here, but here's where you can go. And it's not just the on-site path. There's so many facets to property management that I think people don't think about. You're getting exposure into marketing departments, training departments, asset management, construction, maintenance services. There's so many different career paths that come up from starting at the on-site level. And that's the message we have to keep getting out there. One thing that we've really started to do is we've always done the college career fairs, and we've really promoted our internship program over the last couple of years. And Allison Turner, our senior director of our hiring and recruiting team, is phenomenal at doing that. And over the past year, we've really been a higher focus on going to the technical schools, going to the high schools and getting in front of these kids before they even go to college. And hey, so maybe college isn't where you're headed, but let me show you a great career path and career option that we can get you involved in. We've done a lot of work with our HR attorneys over the past year to get approval to be able to start hiring people under the age of 18 on a part-time basis. There's a lot of regulations that come if you hire under 18 and somebody that's in high school, with the maximum number of hours they can work a week and how they can work and what type of job they can do. But if we can be that part-time job for a junior, senior in high school and get them started on this career path now, imagine where we would have been if we could have started that young and seen the doors that were being opened for us. One thing we're striving to do now, and we were talking about it today in the meeting that we just had, is how do we create, if people are opting to work instead of go to college, or they're working while they're in college, what education outside of, okay, leasing 101 or how to be a RangeWater employee, what training and education can we offer our associates so that we are continuing to better them and help them through their career path and help them through life. So that's really, we're focusing on the associate as a whole. And I think that's one thing that's really helped us with our retention. Our associates know that they're, I don't know, what's the word? They're respected. They know that they are our front line and that we couldn't do this without them. We pour into them to make sure that they know they are heard, that they are loved, and we want to give them what they want. So keeping that talent is crucial, but right now it's getting creative and resourcing it wherever we can get, partnering with great programs like CORE. That's another one that's been great for us, that has really helped us get some talent that maybe would have never gotten put in front of our hiring team otherwise.
I can say with a certainty that your company does a way better job than just the average property management company out there, because I'm seeing initiatives, and some of the ones that you just shared, like they're all over the place. Going to high school, to me, it's absolutely brilliant. Not only that you're telling the young kids out there that there's more to just whether going to college or not. Like, I'm either going to college or pretty much I'm not gonna be much myself. I'm not gonna do much for myself. And you also cut in line too, because there's really no competition. If you get them to start working for you from high school, work part-time, and they actually love it, they find that, hey, this could be for me. You already talk about a career path, define career paths. Those are a big deal. Everybody wants to know, hey, I'm here today, I could be here in like 5 or 10 years, and this is how I get there, right?
Exactly.
So I think that you have a lot going on for you. So that's very exciting to hear, and thank you for sharing with the audience, because it's truly amazing. I think that's what we should be embracing as an industry. Just keep pushing for that, and just bring in the new blood in.
I mean, that's it. I kind of lived it on a personal level, not through multifamily, but again, I have a 20-year-old son. He was graduating high school. He was one of the COVID graduates. He finished high school in the midst of all the COVID pandemic and basically didn't go to school for a year and a half before he graduated. He applied for colleges. He got accepted to the colleges he wanted to go to, got accepted to the colleges with all of his friends. But his junior year of high school, he had started working as a heavy diesel mechanics assistant, and he fell in love with it. So by the time high school was ending, it was, okay, what are you going to do? And he was like, I think I want to go to trade school. I think I want to pursue this heavy diesel route and then get my business degree. I didn't force him in either direction, but I was like, okay, we need to lay this out. Because I'm like, no, I'm going to college. Nope, I'm going to trade school. He could tell me in college what fraternity he wanted to join. He didn't know what he wanted his degree to be. He didn't know anything, but he knew he loved what he was doing in this part-time job he had gotten to start in high school. So he opted to work in a shop every day while after he graduated, and then do his certification for heavy diesel at night and knock it out in the first 18 months. So that's where we are now. He just finished his certification in December. We'll see what he decides to do next. But meanwhile, he has a great job and he's had it the whole time. And he chose a route that spoke to him that kind of went against the society norm.
Such a great story. It's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing. Karen, next I wanted to talk about something that it's very, I'll say it's personal to me, right? I'm very passionate about. I grew up in maintenance in this industry. I came up, started as a groundskeeper. So I'm very passionate about maintenance individuals, professionals developing, and being able to be at a management level too, like, to become managers, not just be the person that carries a tool pouch and, is able to fix things around, be able to manage maintenance. So I'm going to make the statement. You tell me if you agree or you disagree. We as an industry in general, we're lacking management training for our service managers, right? We like to call them service managers. We like them to manage, 60, 70, 80 million dollar assets, but we're not supporting them with the proper training to become managers, to learn how to be managers. And, this could set people up for failure. It creates a lot of extra stress for someone coming, like being the top performing service technician, becoming a service manager. These are two almost completely different jobs. The overlap is very little between the two jobs. So do you agree with the statement that, we're not doing enough as an industry to teach our service managers how to manage?
100%. Could not agree more.
And secondly, what should we do about it?
I think there needs to be more and more training initiatives and made available to them, and that they're pushed to go into. We have a couple of courses that we teach within RangeWater, and they're not optional. Our service techs, our service directors, they have to attend them because we want them to get that education. They walk away from it and they love the fact that they were part of it. They love the fact that they got to come. But a lot of the times, the job that you guys do, and I say you guys, Adrian, because that was your background and where you came from. That job is crucial. And you guys determine the resident satisfaction. Yes, the office can help it or they can break it, but it's really the maintenance is that front line. They are the ones that are in the resident's home. They are the ones that when something breaks, the residents are turning to and they want it fixed quickly. So to pull you guys off site and to have you spend a day, 2-3 days in a training class is hard. It's burdensome on whoever you left on site. It's burdensome to the team. And then it leaves you guys feeling guilty. You're like, I can't be here. I've got this going on. I've got that going on. So that's where, you have to push them to go, because it's hard to get them to step away from that day-to-day obligation because they take so much pride in what they do and they don't want to let anyone down. Some of the courses, we've tried to keep them concise. We try to keep them to where they're only an hour, maybe a couple of hours versus pulling them off site for a full day. And we've done Build Your Bank of Business. And that really talks about the connections you make and how to manage to a budget and how to do all these different things. We've done classes of asset value and teaching them Uncle Irv and how to build the value in their asset and how their job as a service director. And if you save this much on a contract or you spend this much less on a turn, and if you can reduce your supplies by this amount, the impact it has on the value of the asset and the owner's asset and their return on their investment, to get them to truly understand what a vital part they play to a community's success. And when we give this information to them, when we put them through these classes, you can see the light bulbs go off. You can see how much they love having this information, and they're so grateful after, and they always send thank yous. We have those. I still don't think it's enough. It's definitely not enough as an industry. But I think it's something we have to continue to push, and we have to continue to make standard, because we do expect them to be managers. We expect them to understand a budget. We expect them to work to a budget. But, often we have situations where they're not even being brought into the budget process. If a manager is writing a budget without their service director's input, that budget's not going to be valid. They've got to have the input from their service director. They know the asset better than anyone else. They know the capital maintenance that's needed. They know anything else that's going on. And if a service director is not being included in that, you're starting off on the wrong foot.
Well, at least you started somewhere. So it's amazing. It's truly amazing. Most companies haven't even started yet. So I hope that this continues as a trend, and you build on what you already started, and you maybe create a program for service managers, and maybe you're the first company that has like a certified service manager program internal, because we don't see that at a national level. Like National Apartment Association does not have anything like that. We only have something for certified apartment maintenance technician, and we have for community managers, but then not for service managers. So I think it has to be a parity right there. We have to do better.
Yeah, I agree. We do. And I think that is one thing. So IRM goes across all facets of real estate. It's not just multifamily. It has multifamily, it has industrial, commercial, everything. And there's a couple of designations within IRM. And the good thing is, and while I wish we had one that was more specialized to service, and that is something that's been brought up a lot to IRM HQ and hopefully is on their radar as well, you have your ARM and you have your CPM, and that ARM designation is a designation that a lot of service team members can get. A lot of service directors can get that designation. And when they go through that course, they do get to learn a lot about the asset value and the asset management side of things. So there is a way in IREM to get a little bit of that education for your teams. But then I do think as an industry, we have to make it more standard and accessible.
And more tailored on the specific job of a service
Yes.
manager. But I completely agree with you. The ARM designation is a great alternative for right now to get them to the program, get them certified, and get them to be exposed to the management side of things, to understand management.
Yeah, but no, I agree. We need something. It's definitely lacking and needed 100%.
Karen, one of the things that happened during COVID was that, due to the lack of personal contact between our employees for the most part and prospects and residents, the solution for the most part was to develop technology to just kind of bridge that gap, right? So we've seen for the past like 2-3 years, we've been inundated with technology. I'd like to ask you, because, I'm sure that, you've been part of, many pitches, and your company uses a lot of technology, a lot of apps. What are you seeing for trends out there when it comes to technology in multifamily?
Oh gosh, yeah, technology is, we always said it was here to stay, but boy, is it in our face now. It has been more commonplace. I meet like this all day long, every day. We used to have phone calls with our clients and we used to have phone calls with our teams, but I'm on virtual meetings all the time. Honestly, it's actually brought our company closer together. And I think it's brought us and our clients closer together because you get that face-to-face interaction, even though you may not physically be in the same room or even in the same space with someone. So I do think that the ability to interact this way at an organizational level with our teams has helped build our culture and help get our culture out to multiple markets and not be so just, oh, the Atlanta culture where the home office is this way. But we communicate like this with residents now. We communicate like this with prospects. And again, I think it helps us build that rapport. From an on-site perspective, self-guided tours were already emerging and they were already becoming something that prospects liked when they had the option. And some communities had them, but it wasn't really imperative. Now, self-guided tours and virtual tours are what our prospects expect, and it's what they want. And there's tons of studies out there, and they show that these self-guided tours have higher satisfaction ratings than guided tours. So figuring out how, as a company, to incorporate self-guided tours into your arsenal as your leasing company and not let it be, oh, we don't need leasing associates, we have self-guided tours. We have not taken that approach. We're like, okay, how can we make self-guided tours fit within the RangeWater culture and keep our high customer service, our high touch point interaction, but allow them to tour on their own? That is a big one that came into play with it. I think that there are a few other features that really started to come out during COVID, but those are the big ones to me. It's video calls are now commonplace. Video meetings are commonplace. It's helping streamline a lot of things. It builds that culture. It builds that connection. It saves productivity. If you're wanting to have a meeting, you don't have to always fly people in. You don't have to always make people drive from south of Atlanta to north of Atlanta. You can have a 1-hour meeting. People can all be in the same space. I'll be on camera, interact, have fun. We have a philosophy at RangeWater that camera's on. It doesn't matter if the person you're talking to doesn't turn their camera on, it's cameras on. You're always camera on. You're always camera ready, because even if you're not looking at them, they're looking at you. And it really helps build that connection. Another thing that became huge for us, and we always preach this, but it was huddles and talking to your teams on a regular basis. But now we're having these huddles with cameras, and so people are getting to see each other. At a managing director level, I will admit we didn't have a daily huddle. We were making sure our teams did, but the 4 managing directors and senior managing directors weren't coming together. And up until probably 2 months ago, you're talking Tracy Bauer, Sherry Freitas, and all of our managing directors were on a call every morning, Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 9. We've scaled it back now, and we only do it 3 times a week, but 3 times a week at our level, we're still coming together to make sure we're all on the same page. And it's brought us that much closer together as a company.
It's pretty amazing. And I love that you said you have these things, camera on. Camera is on all the time. It's right here.
Yeah.
We live inside this device, and a camera will be on whether you want it or not. It's right on the phone.
Very true.
all the time. So just having this type of awareness, I think it's a great, great, great deal to say, be careful. Cameras on all the time. You got to be ready to roll for camera. Karen, next section of our conversation, I have some rapid fire questions for you. Ready?
Okay.
Books, favorite books, fiction, nonfiction, professional books. What do you like? What do you like?
Actually, if you can see behind me, and there's another stack over here. There's a ton of books in my office. It's hard. It's funny when you say that. I don't have a ton of just pleasure books. I guess I read. I end up reading more for work, and I love those. Atomic Habits is always going to be one of my favorite books when it comes to personal development. If you haven't read it, it's a fantastic read. Another one that's not so personal development, but it is like I guess a management lesson, is the book Fearless. It's actually a story about a Navy SEAL, and it talks about his life from before he joined the military through his time in the military, and he did die in service, but it's telling his story, and it's such an amazing leadership book in terms of how he led his team and the respect his team had for him. So anytime I'm asked favorite book, those two are always top of mind because they're two that I constantly refer back to.
Karen, next question is related to failure. People tend to avoid the subject because I think they might think it's embarrassing. How could I talk about how many times or when did I fail? So my question to you is, how did a failure or apparent failure set you up for future success?
It's funny, I can answer that in so many ways. We actually have a saying around here. We say it two different ways. We say embrace failure, and then we say fail forward, because it's not ever failing as long as you learn something from it. Being a company that pushes the boundaries and tries to be innovative in so many ways, I feel like we fail, if you want to call it that word, often, or something doesn't work out. I would say, oh my gosh, what is probably, like, I'm drawing a blank now on one that comes to mind. There have been so many things that we've rolled out that were a new technology or a new system that we wanted to test that didn't work, that I feel like we tweak along the way, or we scrap and we start over. If you don't put yourself out there and you truly look at it as a failure, it's going to hold you back. And that's why they don't really come to mind to me. Like, yes, there are times I have failed. There are times things didn't go the right way, but they're not drilled in my head as a failure. It's like, okay, that didn't work. Let's try again. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a complete blank, Adrian. I'm sorry.
Well, it's probably because you saw them as learning opportunities. That's probably why.
Okay, and you can appreciate this because of the type of work you do. Trying to staff certain assets. There's a group right now, and we've been really trying to figure out the best way to staff this group of assets, because they're very small. They're not all close to each other, but there's a couple that are over here and a couple that are over here, and they don't really need their own team. So how can we group them? How can we get everything we need done? So we started out one way, and that was, okay, it was mainly for the service side. We'll have a service team that does these. We'll have a service team that does these, and we'll be good to go. And it didn't really work. We were not firing on all cylinders. We weren't getting everything done that we needed to get done. So we've backed up, and there are a couple of different things we came out of this. One, this is for a build to rent portfolio. And we acknowledged that we didn't have a great career path within our build to rent portfolio that attracted the right service team members. It was people saw coming to a lower unit count and not the new and shiny high rise as a step back if they were an experienced service team member in multifamily. So we're like, okay, well, we're wanting them to do multiple sites. So we need to create these layers. So we're going to have these layers based on number of communities, how far apart they are, that you have a service director, then you have a multi-site service director, then there's an area service director, then there's a portfolio. So we created this career path. And in that, we also decided, like, hey, these properties, even though There's some here and some here, but they're in the same metro. Like, we're going to do a portfolio service director over all of them that can direct the teams in both locations. So again, this was something completely new to us, and how to staff this many properties at one time that were small in count. We came up with one way, it didn't really work. And then we stepped back and we created new titles, new positions, and attracted better talent and the right talent for it.
I love the story. Absolutely love it. This is the future.
Yes.
It's actually the present, right? But it's gonna be even more so the future. Karen, what advice would you have for a young person, a young college student coming out of college, graduated college? What would be some pieces of advice that you would find very, very helpful for them when they get ready to enter the real world?
It's funny that you asked me that on the heels of that question, because I knew you were going to ask me the advice. And my advice is always the same in interviews like this. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. Don't just go, oh, that's how it's always been done. That doesn't mean it's how it should continue to be done. Especially people coming out of college, coming out of high school, they have a fresh perspective. And they're speaking to a different generation. And bring those ideas, share those ideas, and speak your mind. Like, don't be afraid to fail, and don't look at it as a failure, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. The last thing, and this goes to anyone regardless of age, is never stop learning. The second you stop learning is the second you're going to be stuck where you are. And that can be taking classes, getting designations, or just as simply as reading some of those books like we've talked about, exploring companies that are outside your industry and how they do things. Like for us, looking at customer service, we always, tried to emulate, and we did a ton of research on Disney, on the Ritz-Carlton, on the Container Store, on Southwest Airlines, industries or companies that are known in other industries for their customer service or their associate engagement. So don't be afraid to fail. Put yourself out there and never stop learning.
Karen, in the last 3 years, what belief, behavior, or habit has improved your life the most?
I would say in the last 3 years that has improved my life the most is remembering and refocusing on, you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others, and taking time to love yourself isn't selfish. It isn't taking away from your job. It's not taking away from your family. It's not taking away from anything. You need that. I know I've mentioned Dr. Debbie a couple times, and she actually has something that she calls the golden goose, and she has the goose calendar. And the goose calendar is, what are you doing for yourself? Because you got to take care of the goose. And her drilling that into my head years ago really started resonating. And it's like, okay, I have to take this time to recharge, because when you give yourself that time to recharge, you come back that much stronger. If you don't take time to care for yourself, you're going to struggle. Your mind is not going to be as sharp. You're not going to be able to help others as much. You're not going to be able to get as much done in a day. So while you may think that taking an hour for yourself is taking an hour away from your productivity, it's really boosting your productivity afterwards by 3 or 4 hours of what you would lose if you didn't take that time.
Karen, when you lose focus or you feel overwhelmed, how do you get back on track?
There's a couple of things. If I can't, the number one thing that'll truly reset me is to attend an associate event or go on site. If I go do site visits, if we're having a training event going on and I go spend time at a training event, or I have the opportunity to do some of the training, being back in touch with our on-site teams and our associates and watching them interact with residents, that always just refills me and gets me going again. If that's not something that's feasible in that moment and I need just a mental reset, it's get up and go for a 30-minute walk. It's just get up, walk away, clear your mind, do something active for 30 minutes and come back. So those are probably the two things I do the most, depending on what my flexibility is at the time.
Karen, unfortunately, we're approaching the end of our conversation. I do want to give you the opportunity to say something that, maybe you wish I would have asked to answer a question you wish I would have asked, or to cover a topic that you're very passionate about, and you didn't have the opportunity to bring it during our conversation?
I think you hit on all my big topics. If I could have written the questions myself, it would have been about the same as what you did. I would say right now, my biggest passion is developing our people. And I know we hit on it and I know we talked about it, but I do feel there is a huge gap and a huge miss right now, and not just with our industry as a whole, in preparing our young people for the real world and preparing them for a career and getting them started in a path that is going to make them successful versus just having them coming out of college with hundreds of thousands of dollars of student debt and still no career path. I'm a huge advocate, and again, I know we talked about this a little bit, of let's get them started in a career. Let's give them classes that are relevant to how it can help them in our company, but also help them get where they want to be in life. Hopefully we would build that loyalty with them if we're pouring back into them, that they're not going to leave us, but that's just a risk we would have to take. I am so passionate about helping guide our young people to help them find their way. I mentioned the story about my son. He graduated in 2022, 2021. So again, he was the second year of COVID, and watching his friends and watching the graduating class after him, I feel that these graduating classes, and I don't know if it's going to continue, we'll see. The kids who actually went back to school for a little bit longer of their high school careers, maybe they won't be the same, but at least those 2 or 3 graduating classes from 2020 to 2022, I feel are pushing the boundaries and not really resonating with that everybody has to go to college path, but they don't know what to do otherwise. They don't know what is out there for them if they don't go to college. And maybe they don't think trade school is their route, because they think trade school, they think diesel mechanic or welder or something like that. But there's so many other options that as an industry, we have got to get in front of these young people, and we've got to help them see what's out there. Our industry, other industries, whatever it may be, we've got to open those doors, and we've got to help them along the way, because right now they're lost. There's so many of them that are lost.
I wanted to say this is such a great message and such a great way to close our conversation. Karen, I would hope that if you have this type of initiatives in the future, you will reach out. My podcast is completely open for this sort of initiatives. I like to make them, to publicize, to make them public, to make them available to a larger public, because this is the only way for us to be sustainable in the industry, and it's also, I think, benefiting the younger generation in a tremendous way. So thank you again very much for coming. I hope to get you back here in a few months to talk a little bit more about your current project that you're on, because this is an exciting time, and it's the future, really. It's gonna be like big in the future. So your company is already ahead of the curve. Thank you again for coming.
No, thank you for having me. This was great. And I'd be happy to come back and talk to you again.
Everybody, thank you very much for watching us today. This is Multifamily Chronicles. I'm your host, Adrian Danila, and I hope to see you back here soon. Have a great day.